Hello, 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 and welcome to another Paul or Nothing spin-off show called Macca in Your Attic, where the guest is always due to show me their junk. Here today, we're going to go through 5 of my guests' rare, fun, interesting, valuable, strange, or sentimental items from their Paul McCartney collections, each with their unique story, though I don't think we're going to be short on unique stories today, folks, because today I'm joined by yet another person that I have not had on the podcast, but someone who I have been eyeing up like a dog eyes up a pie. Oh my gosh. I am so excited for this episode today, folks. I was panicking that I'd have to come up with a topic to get this guy on my podcast, Paul or Nothing. But fortunately, I've already got my own contrived podcast. I've already got my own contrived format, which is this show. In all seriousness, I am speaking to someone who was not only a witness, but an active part in Paul McCartney's history, specifically Tennessee, 1974. Everyone, please welcome Dan Ealey. Dan.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's going on, friend? Oh, yeah.
Start with wings.
Okay, let's just get this out of the way. This never took off the way Paul wanted it to. It's such a shame. I feel like he was hoping across Wings Over America, there'd be crowds like that and crowds like that. And I mean, Silly Love Songs got to #1 for 4 weeks. So, you know what? Swings and roundabouts, but yeah, that's definitely a nice little indication that you are certainly on the inner circle here, Dan. But
Thanks.
I think it's safe to say that, yeah, you're quite a unique person to have on this show. I don't think anyone who can come on this format can have anything you are about to show me today. I think that's fair to say, isn't it?
I think it's fair to say. I started out at 9 years old at the movie theater on February 9th, 1964 with my Cub Scout crew. And before the movie started, my friend Mike Nichols said, "Hey, Dan, are you going to watch the Beatles tonight?" And my response was, "What's the Beatles?" And he said, "Just watch Ed Sullivan tonight." Well, that was a Sunday night. A Sunday night in America, if you're 9 years old in 1964, you should have been at church. So a lot of people, a lot of kids had a stomach ache, they had a headache, they didn't feel like going, and they laid out of church and they watched Ed Sullivan. And basically what happened is life changed as we knew it the next day at school. Because it wasn't just about the music, "I Want to Hold Your Hand, She Loves You." Mm-hmm. It was about their fashion. Mm-hmm. It was about the way they spoke. It was about their humor. And then it was about their music. So for me, all through grade school, all through junior high, and all through high school, it was all about the Beatles to me. Now, it got compounded by the fact that my dad could play guitar and sing.
Okay.
So I learned to play guitar. And by the time I was 12, I was playing in a band, and it was still all about the Beatles. So this continued after I graduated from high school. And I was in a band, and I was working. I had my Rickenbacker bass like Paul had. I got my first Hofner bass when I was 12.
Oh, God.
And I have 5 of these now, but I've owned over 100.
You have 5 and you've owned over 100.
Have owned over 100, including, I'm going to get a little crazy with the camera now. You see my 1966 mint condition Vox Super Beetle amp, which is what they used in America on the second tour. Oh. And so it got crazy for me with gear. and my friends were all into the Beatles. And I was working and playing in a band in 1974 in June, early June, when I picked up the newspaper and it said, Paul McCartney rumored to visit Music Row in Nashville. So I said, if Paul is coming to Nashville, which is an hour from me, there's no way that's going to happen without me meeting. Well, I subscribed to Melody Maker magazine from England, which I loved because it was more music. Now, to subscribe to that in 1974, it was kind of pricey to wait on the post for your magazine to show up from the UK. But I had mine, and the next day I pick up the paper, and Paul is getting off the airplane on the tarmac at the Nashville airport.
And you're starting the car at this point. You're putting your shoes on, yeah.
Well, I pick up my Melody Maker, and I look down the side of it, and I see the name Chris Charlesworth, U.S. editor. And there's a phone number in New York. And I said, Paul is bound to have a press conference, something. I could represent myself as a reporter. So let me call up this editor and tell him I'm a reporter. Paul will recognize Melody Maker magazine and I'll be in. So I dial the number. Chris Charlesworth answers. Chris, this is Dan Ealey. I'm a stringer reporter in Tennessee, and I'd like to cover Paul McCartney and Wings' visit to Nashville for Melody Maker magazine. Well, do you have any experience? Of course I have experience, but I'm going to need a letter from you. The only real experience I had was I wrote for my high school newspaper, and every article, no matter what the subject was, had a reference to the Beatles.
The Beatles,
I made sure that it was buried in the article. In every article I did, there was something buried about the Beatles in it. So he says, well, I can get you a letter. Yes, what's your address? And he agrees to send me this letter, which arrived a few days later.
Oh my gosh, here we go. Oh, dear Mr. Ealey, following a telephone conversation yesterday, this letter confirms you may represent Melody Maker at the press party of Paul McCartney, Nashville area. Oh my God! Oh, you smooth talking, silver tongued devil! You! Oh my gosh!
So now I have my letter, but the problem is where Paul and Wings is staying and outside of Nashville is top secret. It's top secret. It's not in the papers. It's not on the news. There's no reference to it. So I start calling around any place I can in Nashville music circles to ask them. And I was getting tidbits of information. It's in Lebanon, Tennessee. It's a farm. It's a doctor's house. It's a mansion. They have a pool. And someone said it's on Franklin Road. Okay, so I work every day till 2 p.m. So I wait till my next Sunday for the day off, and I grab my Rickenbacker bass. I throw it in the car. I get my envelope with Chris Charlesworth's letter, and I drive down the interstate 60 miles, and I get off. It's Sunday morning. It's about 10:30, and I'm on the rural back roads in Tennessee of Wilson County looking for Paul McCartney and Wings. And as I drive in my Ford Torino station wagon, I see nothing that looks like what I think in my mind I should see, a mansion on the side of the road. I see regular bungalow style houses, and there's no one else on the road because it's rural Wilson County. on a Sunday morning. So now I just say, well, I'm going to have to turn around and go home. So I turn around and I start back, and I thought, I'm going to ask someone. But wait, there's no one to ask. And I looked up, and there was a farmer walking along the road in his overalls. And I thought, okay, pull over, ask him, but don't mention the name Beatles. So I eased up, I reached over to my passenger side window, and I eased it down, and he sort of looked in the car, and I said, sir, can you tell me where there's a mansion on Franklin Road with a doctor's house and a pool? And he immediately said, there's not one. There's not one. I thought, hey, how does he know that so quick? I said, are you sure? It's a large house with a pool, a mansion, a doctor's house. He said, there's not one on Franklin Road. So I paused, and I knew I was going to have to say it. And so I said, sir, one of the Beatles is staying there. He looked at me and said, you mean those fellers from England?
It's like a scene from a movie. Oh my God.
I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. They're from England. He goes, well, they're staying up at Junior Putman's place, but they don't have a swimming pool. I said, okay, where is it? He goes, well, it's just right up the road here, on up the road around the curve. I said, okay, where now? Tell me again, because I didn't want to miss it. He told me. So I turned around. Now, without this man appearing there, I would have come back home, and the following story that I'm going to tell you would have never occurred. So I turn around.
I'm feeling so tense right now. My chest is pounding right now. And it's funny that you should happen, because when I went to see Paul McCartney at the O2, I nearly had to leave for some reason, a very embarrassing reason, but a janitor pointed me to a customer service desk, and there were some spare seats that were more accommodating for me, and I got to see McCartney live. So it's the odds of this happening are astronomical.
Yes.
Oh, please don't let me interrupt you. Oh my gosh.
I turn around and I'm driving back on the road, and I'm looking, and suddenly as I come around a curve, it opens up to the left, and I see this huge mansion 1,000 yards up on the hill with a formal entrance. And then I knew this is it. My plan was to drive past it. There was a small house next to it, and I was going to pull in the driveway and pull out and come back and take a second look and get my plan together. But when I pulled in the driveway of the house next door, I see Denny Lane and Jimmy McCullough standing out under a shade tree drinking a beer.
Oh.
Jimmy's sitting on the ground, Denny's standing up. And I pull in, and I reach for my letter beside me, and I exit the car. When I get out of the car, I introduce myself. I'm Dan Ealey from Melody Maker magazine. Chris Charlesworth sent me. And I really didn't get much of a response. And so I'm looking at them, and they're sort of looking at me. And I say to Jimmy, you know who Chris Charlesworth is, don't you? And Jimmy says, yeah, I know who Chris Charlesworth is. And so I said, hey, I got a guitar in the car. Would you like to see this guitar? And they said, yeah, get it out. So I get the guitar out. Okay, here we go. And there is me with Denny Lane with my Rickenbacker bass. And Denny's dancing around with it. And he says, Paul would love this. And in 2 minutes, I said, okay, give it to him. And I leave my bass, my hard-earned, newly purchased from Manny's Music Shop in New York, the Rickenbacker bass guitar.
Oh my gosh.
Now, so here you see me as I looked in 74 before I went to the farm playing in my band with my Paul McCartney overalls on.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's perfect.
And my Band on the Run button.
Oh my gosh.
And here you see Alan Crowder from MPL with Denny eyeballing the Rickenbacker that I just handed over to be given to Paul. So now things are looking better for me. I'm bribing my way in by giving Paul my Rickenbacker bass, as suggested by Denny Lane.
You're a master tactician. You're a master tactician here.
So
they're
now,
in the palm of your hand. What the flip?
Now I start going down every day. It's about, there should be about 45 minutes from my work, but I break all the speed laws possible. And I'm arriving in record time every day.
2:27, yeah.
And I'm bringing shirts, gifts for the kids. The car's loaded up with all kinds of liquor for the band. I'm showering them daily with gifts. I have my box of McCartney and Wings LPs. I have magazines. And they're sitting at the table one day, at the breakfast table. And I said to them, hey, Denny, why did you shave your beard when you were in Nigeria? And Jimmy turns and looks at me and he says, and he looks back at me and goes, he knows more about us than we do. And they all burst out laughing because of Jimmy's comment. And every day then I show up, they'd be up, I'd hear them rehearsing in the garage, and I'm hearing what Adrian Allen described to me in his book, McCartney Appreciation. He says to me, you were the first guy to hear Wings in America live. I said, what? He said, yeah, I think you were the first fan in America to hear Wings perform live. And I was just thinking about it for a second. And I thought, yeah, they toured, they did the universities in the UK. They played a few gigs. Then they showed up in Nashville and they hadn't been to America before. And I'm outside the garage and they're rehearsing. My Love, Jet, Band on the Run, Little Woman Love, Hi, 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 Band on the Run. And I said, I guess I was. I never thought about it.
Jesus. Oh my.
So every day.
I'm rarely ever this speechless. I'm normally quite obnoxious and interruptive, but like, you know, the cojones on display here. And then the follow-up gifts as well. Like that's
well, so he figured that out in all these years, 40 years, that thought had never occurred to me. But he figured that out. So credit to Adrian Allen for that. But so every day I'm going down and I'm hanging out with the band. I see Paul riding up and down the driveway on the motorbike, and he's over swimming in the pond. And one day I show up and Jimmy says, hey, it'll be better if you don't come down tomorrow. I said, okay. I said, what's going on? He said, it'll just be better if you're not here. I said, okay. So the next day, I did not make my trip down to visit them. And we had a huge electrical storm in Tennessee. Lots of lightning, power out, torrential rain. So the following day now, I'd observed their request not to come down. So the following day, I get up, I go to work, I get off, and I head down. And when I get there there's the gate entrance at the front, and right beside it was where the band stayed most of the time when I was there, which they refer to as the gatehouse. And then Paul and Linda in the rehearsal was 1,000 yards up the hill at the mansion. So on the next day I arrive, I see them bringing in champagne and ice. This is very unusual activity. So I'm just observing. And I look out the window of the guest house. I call it the guest house. And I had my binoculars and I look down toward the little picnic pavilion about 400 yards away by the pond. And I see Paul, and he's wearing the shirt I gave him. So I'm hollering, he's wearing my shirt. He's wearing my shirt. That's what I'm yelling out to the other members of Wings and back behind me. Paul's got my shirt on. Paul's got my shirt on. So Jimmy comes up to me and says, look, apparently this party that is now fixing to happen for Paul's birthday on June 18th of 74 was supposed to happen the night before. And I was not supposed to be there because they had asked me not to come. So I show up the next day and the party's on. Well, Jimmy says, hey, we're having a little get together. Paul is wanting us to work the gate, but we don't want to. We want to go to the party, but you could do it. He said, you could work the gate. I said, okay, what's work the gate mean? He goes, well, you go out to the gate and you'll let people in that should be in and you'll keep everyone else out. I said, well, how will I know? He said, look, you'll know. It's going to be Chet Atkins, Jerry Reed, and Roy Orbison. And if you'll do this, when we're through, we'll take you down to meet Paul. I said, okay. So it's very hot out. It's about, I would say, four-ish in the afternoon, and I make my way to the gate, and they're down at the little picnic pavilion. I can see the activity about 400 feet away. It's not very far. And here comes a black Porsche. And it pulls into the entrance, and I look into the car, and it's Roy Orbison. And I look close, and he has leather on. He has black leather jacket, black t-shirt, black leather trousers, big black sunglasses, and his hair is jet black but combed down. And I'm thinking, it's 100 degrees. And as I waved him through, I thought, it's more important to look cool than to be cool. So he pulls through. Now, I'm watching the activity from the gate, and I've figured out in my mind that one of the guys, Jeff Britton, Jimmy McCullough, or Denny is going to come from the little pavilion and get me at some point. And I'm just waiting, I'm watching. And suddenly I see someone walk out, and I look.
Oh, God.
And it's Paul. And he's walking alone through the field toward me. Now, you have no idea how unnerving all of you listeners who have dreamed of meeting Paul in your life, like me, who had looked at him in Hard Day's Night in the matinee from 9 a.m. till midnight repeatedly. Hell, Hard Day's Night, Let It Be. I mean, I was such a massive fan. I studied all those books of the skyline of Liverpool, everything. And now suddenly I'm watching Paul walk toward me in the shirt that I gave him, that's all embroidered in birds. And I put his name, Paul, in red on the collar. And as he approaches me, I ease my camera out of my pocket foolishly, and I laid it on the gate post because I did not want anything to interfere with this meeting that was fixing to happen. So Paul comes up to me, he says, "You're the one with the bass," referring to me giving the bass. I said, "Yes."
You're the one
He
with the
said,
bass. Oh my God.
you know, it would be silly. It would be silly for me to keep it. I said, okay. So we walked together about 400 feet together down to the pavilion. And he says, Dan, I want you to meet Roy Orbison. And I shook hands with Roy, all in his black leather. A little to set what's going on there for a party for Paul there. It's very low key. There's just music like on a little cassette deck. There's finger food. It's very low key. There's wine. Linda is in a long peasant dress. The wings is scattered around talking to each other. Jerry Reed has left by this time. Chet Atkins is gone. And it's just me, Paul, and Roy Orbison. So I tell Paul, I'm looking at Paul in the face, and I said, Paul, you know, when the Beatles broke up, a lot of your fans broke up too. You know, I said, fans of John's went with him, and your fans went with you. And I said, friendships actually broke up when the Beatles broke up. I mean, I never thought about it during this conversation of what I was saying. It's just what came out, this one-on-one conversation with Paul. We talked a little about the fan club. I was a big advocate for the fan club to do more. And he told me, well, you speak to my manager, Brian Broley, about that. And eventually I moved off from him and Roy, and I went over to, not smother them. And I went over and spent some time with the rest of the band. And Jimmy, eventually I hear him holler for me, hey, Dan. I look up, he says, Paul is hollering at you. And I looked, and Paul and Linda have gotten into the car, which is pulled down in the field next to the pavilion at the pond. And so I walk over. This is what Paul was doing. Paul was making sure that he acknowledged me and told me goodbye. And that's just the kind of guy he is. And he knew they'd all told him what a big fan I was of him. I mean, I gave him my bass. And he was going to acknowledge me before he left. And I said, Paul, just in case you don't know, Yellow Submarine is on Nashville TV tonight. And I said, you going to watch it? He said, I don't know. But that was, now Linda says in this newsletter up here behind me, that the best night they had, her favorite time was on Paul's birthday at the barbecue at the picnic area. And besides Jerry Reed, Chet Atkins, Roy Orbison, Dan Ealey was there, some 19-year-old kid who idolized his hero, Paul McCartney. And somehow I managed to be there. So that shirt that I gave him has showed up now in a lot of photographs. If you look at Paul at the LA Forum on his birthday in June of 76, he's wearing my shirt again. Paul, you could get another shirt for your birthday. No, it's an honor to see it. I would notice it everywhere. It's so embroidered. Yeah. And most people, you don't get enough close up to know, but here on the collar in red, it says Paul. So that was, one of 3 or 4 encounters that I had with Paul during my visit. Another was I decided one day to take my guitar player friend Billy with me because he and I had idolized the Beatles and played in the band and adored the Beatles since we were 15. And I asked him one day, I hesitated. I was at his house. I said, hey, you want to go see Paul? He goes, yeah, I'd like to go. So we take off down the interstate and we get out at the farm, and I go in the gatehouse and he stays outside, and suddenly he runs in and goes, come on, Paul's coming down the driveway. So I ran out with my camera, and Billy's telling me many years later, you ran out in front of the car. I said, no, I didn't. He said, yes, you did. So, if you look at my pictures that you can see on Paul McCartney and Wings at Junior's Farm, the Facebook page, you'll see that Paul is there in the driver's seat and the hood ornament is right in front of me. So I did actually run out in front of the car. But here's the funny thing. Paul rolls down the window. Now, my friend Billy has never been there before. And on his first occasion, he gets to meet Paul. But Paul rolls down the window and goes, "How you doing, Dan?" And my friend is hearing Paul McCartney call out my name. And he looks at me and he says, "Paul McCartney knows your name." I said, "If I ever write a book, I'll call it Paul McCartney Knows Your Name." So he gets to meet Paul and gets his picture made with Paul. And he's still making payments to me 45 years later. He's still trying to pay me back for meeting one of the Beatles, you know.
Oh,
but
he'll never pay you back. It's a life debt, that is.
I don't know. I don't know. You may change your opinion on what I'm fixing to tell you. And that is that when they eventually left Lebanon and I got my Rickenbacker bass back and my records, my bootleg records, which they told me, Wings, the members of the band said, "Whatever you do not let Paul know that you have bootleg records here."
Ooh.
So I took them back, but foolishly at 19, I sold my Rickenbacker bass that Paul had played in the rehearsals there at the farm. Because you're 19, you do dumb things. Okay. So I'm still playing today in a band with my guitarist, Billy, who I took to meet Paul and was there when I gave him my bass. And I had to hear for 45 years, "Why did you sell it? Why?" I sold it to a man who played bass in a gospel quartet. He's probably in his 40s. I'm 19. And I eventually tried to get it back from him, but he said Paul McCartney played it. I wouldn't take anything. Now, this is a very long story, and I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but your viewers can check out the story on Facebook, on YouTube, by putting in Dan Ealey, Ealey, Paul McCartney, and that Rickenbacker story will come up. But here's what happened. I chased that bass for 42 years.
Oh my God.
I chased it for 42 years, and I gave up in 1995 because I saw the man obituary that I sold it to. I saw his obituary in the local paper. I eventually called his family and I just said, "Hey, could I come by sometime and just see it one last time? Could I just put it on, play it for 10 minutes? I won't take your time up. I'd just like to play it one last time." I had a lot of emotions tied up in it. They said, "Well, you know, when Daddy died, that bass went to his sister in Nashville." I said, "No, I didn't know." They said, "Yes, and his sister passed away and her daughter got it, and it was either sold or pawned, and we don't know what happened to it." So I tell my friend Billy, "It's over. It's over. The bass is gone. We'll never see it again." And I said, "You know, Billy, one thing about it, I didn't write down the serial number. How would we ever know?" He said, "Let's look at the pictures."
No.
When you look at this photograph, at the bottom of my hand there's a dark spot in the wood.
Yeah.
You see that dark spot?
Yeah.
And then above my hand, there's a knot. You see that in the wood grain?
That's very distinctive.
Now, Billy is a guitar expert. He said, "You're lucky because most of those Rickenbackers do not have that. If we ever run into it, that's how we'll know that's it. Let me take a picture of you, that picture, and put it on my iPad. And if I ever run into it, then I'll know." And I'm looking at him like, "You're out of your freaking mind. You're not going to run into this bass. But go ahead. Put it on your iPad. Now, on May 19th of 2017.
So this is 18 years after that.
Now, I buy guitars and he buys guitars, and we call each other suddenly sometimes and say, hey, here's a guitar you might be interested in. And our rule is if you call each other 3 times in a row, it's important. Mm-hmm. That morning, I was on the phone. My real job for 35 years is I've been a private detective. I still am. And that's helped me a lot in these endeavors.
Oh my God, this is the best story ever. Oh my God.
But he calls me. I'm on the phone with an insurance company, and I see him calling. And I look at my phone. I'm talking to the insurance company, and I send the message to voicemail. And I go back to the insurance company, and I look, and Billy's calling again. And I send it to voicemail. And I go back for the 3rd time, and Billy's calling again. So I tell the insurance company, hey, I got to take this call. And my phone goes off that I have a message, but I didn't listen to it. I just returned the call. And when I called him, I said, what are you doing? Blowing up my phone. He said, if you're not interested in this bass I've found, I may just buy it myself. Oh, what? Okay, what bass? He said, you know the local pawn shop across from the donut shop? I said, yeah. He said, I just went in there, and the owner said, hey, you think Dan would be interested in a bass? Billy said, probably not. What is it? He said, it's a Rickenbacker. I said, okay, what year is it? He said, it's 1974. We looked it up. He said, okay, what color is it? He said, it's maple. Billy said, let me go out and get my iPad. So Billy goes out, he gets his iPad, he finds the photo, and he sticks this photo up in their face. And they said, that's it. That's the bass. But we sold it yesterday.
No.
Said, it's been in the pawn shop for over 10 years. I said, what? How does a bass stay in a pawn shop for 10 years? He said it came in, it went to the warehouse. A lot of other stuff, big items came in that day. It got shoved to the back. More stuff came in, everything got moved, and we didn't find it till yesterday. And a guy came in and bought it. Said, but the guy that bought it is not a musician. He buys gold and silver from us. And he sometimes buys a guitar to flip. Do you want me to call him and see if he's got it? Billy said, call him, see if he's got it. So they called him, said, hey, you still got that bass you bought yesterday? He goes, yeah, still got it. He goes, okay, you want to sell it? He goes, that's what I got it for. Says, okay, well, there's a guy here in town thinks that might be his original bass. Now, remember, they don't know the McCartney connection. Mm-hmm. He said, I'm going to have him call you. So they call me, they tell me, and I eventually get him to send me a photograph so I can confirm the spots. And I tell him, and here you see his actual photo with the date and time that it arrived on my phone.
May 19th.
And you see
the knot.
The knot.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
He says in his messaging, I ran home to shoot your pictures. It looks like it's yours. Now, let me ask you this question right now. How does this happen that the guy who was with me when I gave that bass to Paul McCartney, that I played with in a band all these years, how does he walk into a pawn shop 42 years later and discover that bass?
It makes you think of a higher power. It does.
Well, yes.
It does.
Listen,
It's fate.
I jumped in the car and I tell the guy, because he lives outside of Nashville, meet me in Lebanon, because Lebanon, Tennessee is where Junior's farm was. And I said, I'll buy it from you. We agreed upon a price and we rolled up together. And
there it is.
There he is with the bass. Now, here's a strange thing about it. There was a blue notebook in the case. And when we got the blue notebook out and opened it, it had gospel music in it.
Oh, so yeah. Oh, wow.
And it said, Stephen Street Baptist Church, Cookeville, Tennessee, Mr. Stringer. And he's the man that I sold the bass to. And it had a guitar strap there in it that he appeared on an album with the bass many years earlier. And it still had that guitar strap in it. And it also had a piece of equipment in the cavity that I had bought in 1974 called a Ricka Sound Kit, was still there, that no gospel bass player would have ever used. So now I will present to you.
Oh, come on. Let's do this. Oh, there it is. Oh, with a lovely Red Rose Speedway decal as well.
Well, and gospel bass players did not abuse their instruments. And it is in very nice condition.
There it is. He touched it. He touched that. Oh my
So
God.
Here's what Jeff Britton says about the bass.
He touched that.
First of all, before I tell you that, I want to show you this. After I got the bass back, I got in touch with Denny Lane.
Oh, no fucking way.
I get in touch with Denny Lane.
No.
And he comes down and poses with me with the same bass 42 years apart.
That's incredible. That is, same smile, same silly old smirk as well. God, that's. I love how you're holding the photo in the photo. That's so brilliant.
And he signed this for me. When I saw him, I said, Denny, you've been nominated to a Hall of Fame, and now you've been laminated. So that bass has come full circle. Now, you got to keep in mind that Jeff moved off from Wings in 75 and disappeared for all practical purposes for most of our lives overseas. Me being a private detective, I wanted to find him again. And it took me 4 years to find him. It took me 4 years to establish contact. In 2018, I contacted him, and when I messaged him, I did not put my name. I just sent a picture. And I said, I knew you in Nashville. I'd like to connect with you again. And he replied, but you didn't give me your name. I think your name is Dan.
That's so sweet.
After 42 years, so I reconnect with Jeff, who I talk to almost 2 or 3 times a month now, all the time. And Jeff eventually gets on a plane in Spain and comes here and plays with my band. And we go back to Junior's farm for the first time in 42 years. We go to Junior's farm together. Now, here's what Jeff says about the bass. First of all, Denny said, after Paul decided to give it back, he wanted the bass, but Paul wouldn't let him have it. That Paul said there's only going to be one Rickenbacker in the band, and Paul's going to play it. Now, Jeff said the bass was a problem for Paul. He tells this, you guys can find this I find in my YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
there's a recording of Jeff talking about this, that the bass was up at the garage. Paul was playing it. Paul can flip. All you people who say, but Paul's a left-handed player, you must understand, Paul can play either way. He started out as a right-handed player. He can flip an instrument over and he can just play it. He does it in a lot of different, if you check around in the Rockestra documentary, he goes up to the bass player and says, let me show you a part. He gets the guy's bass, he flips it over and he shows him his part. So Jeff said Paul had the bass up there, he was tinkering with it, he was playing it, and it became a problem because he did not want to deprive a fan of his instrument. So he eventually decided that it would mean more to me if he played it and gave it back, returned the bass to me, which is what he did. And all these years, I have the bass. It's back. You heard the story. It's back with me. You know, it's had a tremendous history, but I've got it back, and you would have never imagined it would have made its way back to me. Now, here's what's happened with the bass. At my event I had in 2019, where Jeff Britton came and he played with my band, that is the first time Jeff had played Junior's Farm live since he recorded it in Nashville in 1974.
Wow.
He meets a young musician there who shows up at our event named Jonathan Pushkar. Jonathan is a 25-year-old musician who is an up-and-coming power pop artist. And eventually, I think the story goes, he showed Jeff his album at the time, which wasn't this one. And Jeff said, well, I love the album. The only problem was I didn't play on it. And Jonathan said, we'll correct that on the next one. So he got in touch with Jeff, and Jeff plays on 3 tracks on this new album released in the 1st of June called Compositions by Jonathan Pushkar. And one of the tracks is Junior's Farm. It's the cover of Junior's Farm that we redid, and I played the bass on it with the Rickenbacker bass.
Jesus.
So the only person.
Sorry to interrupt. We actually played all of that. Actually, we closed an episode of the podcast out quite recently with that cover, and I must say, you guys really held your own with that material. And rather like Denny Sile on that Ram On tribute we had recently, Jeff Britton's like, "Yep, I'm still here. I'm still Jeff Britton. I'm still rocking." And you 3 guys together really did that song justice, and you should be really proud of yourselves for it. It was awesome.
Well. Some people pointed out to me that the only person that has recorded with Jeff Britton playing Junior's Farm was me and Paul McCartney. Now, but I'll tell you this about Junior's Farm, the history of it. I was standing in the field listening to them rehearse, and, I recorded them. I recorded 2 hours that I have on tape of Wing's first live performance in America.
Hang on, I've got to stop you here. You've got bootlegs.
No.
You had bootlegs in your, like, to not show Paul. There must have been a market, a temptation, a guy you could have sold those recordings to and made a quick buck, surely.
Well, yes, but I never did. In fact, the number 2 mastering engineer in the world offered to master those for me, Denny Purcell. And I would not let anyone do anything to them, because I know all it takes is a flip of a switch and they're gone.
Yeah.
So I'm the only one that's ever had a copy of them. Now you can listen again on my YouTube page. Dimitri Kaladimas, an award-winning Nashville reporter who does a story, and I allowed her to play very small snippet of several songs, so you can get a flavor for it. My Love, different songs there that he's playing.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I heard them rehearse every day, and I knew all the songs except one. And I kept asking, they kept going over the song over and over and over and over. It was very boring for me to be sitting out there and not hear the songs I recognize. So when Denny comes in one afternoon, I said, what was that song you kept playing over and over? He said, you'll find out later. And what I found out later was it was Junior's Farm. And so I believe I was the first person outside the band to hear Junior's Farm, because I was there listening in mid-June, around the 16th, the 17th, and they did not go in the studio to July 9th to record it. And I have it on my tape.
I'm guessing as well, there was no piano available at the farm. So
yeah, I had a Fender Rhodes electric piano.
Oh, there was. Okay, because I was going to say, like, obviously, Junior's Farm is a very rock-based track, and I guess I was assuming that maybe.
What they were doing, Sam, is they were working on the intro very slowly. They were working out the parts, and Linda was on the Moog synthesizer, and they were doing the da 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 da. They were playing it about half speed, and they were going through this over and over and over. And eventually, on my tape, they played Junior's Farm in its entirety. But it's never been recorded at that time. The song had not been recorded. It wasn't until October of '74 that I heard it on one of my favorite radio stations at the time, WLS Chicago, premiered the song. And I was out in the car when I heard it come on, and I pulled over. I was so shocked because I knew then that was the song I had heard in the field that I didn't recognize. And I called up John Records Landecker, the DJ in Chicago for WLS, and I told him the story about that. And so I think I was the first person outside the band to hear Junior's Farm in its entirety. I didn't know what it was at the time. Though now look how it comes full circle. I'm there at 19 with Jeff Britton, with Denny, with Jimmy, and I'm hearing this song, Junior's Farm, being developed, written, and put into some form. And then 45 years later, I'm playing with that drummer on the track. It's something that it's hard to wrap your head around.
You sure this isn't just a screenplay you've written? And
I know.
And you're just a very talented screenwriter, because not only like there are setups and payoffs, there's like symbolism, there's arcs. Oh no.
So look at this. Jeff, I actually sent this to Spain because never in my wildest imagination did I ever think I would talk Jeff Britton in to getting on a plane in Spain and coming here and meeting all the fans. He signed, people sent items from all over America, and I'm a fan first, and I took everything they could send me and I organized it. And when Jeff walked into my house one day, I set him down and I ran him through a assembly line. And it wasn't people just saying, could you sign Jeff Britton? It was people, could you sign Jeff Britton to, Sam? Could you sign, the Poker Man? Because Jeff is known as the Poker Man from the Junior's Farm song. And so, listen, Jeff signed for everyone. He posed for hours and hours and hours with photographs. He's a very talented, extraordinary person. I befriended him. He befriended me. And I used to call him in Kent when he lived in Kent. And I would call his mother and she would say, Jeff's not here, but here's the number to the studio. And I call the studio and they would go get him. And I have him on the phone on one call. And he says, I better go. Paul's hollering for me. So I was interrupting their sessions, but I was just a 19-year-old kid. On the bass, by the way, I have the affidavit signed by Jeff Britton about the bass. I have an affidavit signed by Denny Lane.
Jesus Christ.
About the bass.
Oh my gosh. Excuse my French.
All I need, if Paul, if you're out there, I'll come to you. in New York, Los Angeles, London, wherever you are.
I've never seen that bass before in my life, Dan. I've never seen it before. I don't know what you're on about, no.
But hey, I want to show you a couple other items before I get too far away. By the way, those of you that might want this limited edition blue vinyl of Jonathan's, you can go to Jonathan Pushkar's website and you'll find it. It's a
Links down below.
It's a great copy. But look, you see this record here?
Yes.
This is a one-sided demo record of Soily, given to me by Jimmy McCullough at the farm.
Oh my gosh.
And at that time, Soily was not even released. It wasn't released to 76.
Have you played that? Is that like a studio Soily or?
Yeah,
that's a studio Soily.
Oh no, it says live in Newcastle.
Oh, okay.
I think they must have listened to these to sort of, listen to get their licks down. But it's handwritten. Says rough mix, EMI Studios, Abbey Road, St. John's Woods, Wings, and Soily is misspelled.
How's it spelled?
Soilie.
Soily.
So they, at that time, they didn't even know what they were doing with the song.
OS of Soily, that's funny.
So he gave me that in 74. And this frame that you're looking at has been framed since 1976. And here you see me with, where are you?
We're here.
Let's see. It's a little hard to navigate, but you see me with Paul here.
Oh, that's you in by the car. Oh my God. Oh my gosh.
And then here is this card that Paul and Linda signed for me that says, thank you for your help in making Band on the Run #1 in record world, Billboard, and Cashbox. That's
insane. That's absolutely insane. My iPad's just dying. Bear with me just one moment. I'm just going to grab a cable.
Sure. I think he really went to the loop.
And
hey, I want to tell you a crazy story.
I'm back.
I want to tell you a crazy story about this photograph right here.
Oh, look at that mullet and that mustache. Beautiful.
But there's something about it. It was laying on the coffee table at the farm. Get my fingers out of the way. It was laying at the coffee table on the farm, and I picked it up, and Jimmy said, you can have it if you want it. And I looked at it, and they had, I'm going to say they, and I don't know who they was, but they took a pencil and they drew glasses on Linda, a goatee, and horns.
Really?
And you can't see it here. I took a pencil eraser back in 74 and I erased it, what they had. And but if you hold it in the light just right,
you can see
you
the
can
outlines,
still see the indentions of where they someone in the band who will never know had a little fun with a promotional picture of Paul and Linda at the farm.
Oh my gosh! I think we can all make we can all make our own guesses there, folks.
Also up here is an autograph that has Jeff and Jimmy in it. Right here. It's faded a lot now, but it's got Jimmy and Jeff did sign it. And it's just a lot of mementos. This item here is the original address marker at the farm.
Wow. How'd you get that? How'd you walk away with that?
I'm sorry, I got a bad connection. I can't hear you.
How did you get that? How
I'm
did you?
sorry, I still have a bad connection.
Oops. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? How about
Not
now?
not to answer that question, no.
Oh, I get it. It's a bit. Sorry, folks.
No, actually, the house had been sold and was being remodeled, and I had an opportunity to get it. But there it is, funny. 4411 Franklin Road.
This is this setup as well you've got is just gorgeous as well, like putting it all together as well.
Well, there's a few pictures up there at the top of Paul and Jimmy and
word.
But Jeff, you know, it's been a fantastic journey. Denny says I attended a show. You can find this on my YouTube channel. I mean, a show of Denny's. And after he plays a song, he says, there's a guy in the audience that showed up at the farm pretending to be a reporter or photographer or something. But there he is, Dan Ealey. We haven't been able to get rid of him for 40 years. But there he is. Well, Denny, it's been 47 years now. And you still haven't been able to get rid of me.
Like I say, Dan, normally I'm quite talkative, as my listeners will know, but I'm flabbergasted. I really am. As someone who always thinks to themselves, yeah, like if I was there and Paul was there, I'd totally have the chrum to walk up to him and smile my way in. But you did it. You were there. You like that. That is way more impressive than the boy that managed to get into the Yellow Submarine premiere. You got to go several interactions. That
they actually.
I can't put it into words. I really can't.
I gotta give a lot of credit to the guys in Wings because apparently, you know, we gelled in some fashion. They liked me. We got along. Mm-hmm. We got along, and I've been able to remain friends with them all these years, continuing my friendship. And I'm honored for that because I love all those guys.
Of course.
Today, I'm still friends with Denny and Jeff, and I'm honored to be that. And the story continues. I mean, with the new Juniors Farm, I mean, the Juniors Farm, the single is hit from Jonathan is hit on several independent charts in the top 10, and Jeff's on it. It's hard to believe that I'm playing on Juniors Farm with the original drummer from Wings.
It really is. What an incredible arc you've had, like the beginning to the end. It really is like a movie. It needs to be put into a screenplay. It really does, because there'll be people in the audience going, "Oh, well, that didn't happen. Oh, well, that didn't happen."
I'll tell you something about I thought about the Soily tune. When we got the record in '74, my band was out playing clubs when I'm going, you know, on off days down and hanging out with Wings, and I took Soily and I recorded it on a reel-to-reel because I didn't want to be playing the acetate.
Of course.
And we didn't know the song because it hadn't been released, but we wanted to learn it and be playing it because we thought, how cool will it be to be out here playing these gigs with this song by McCartney and Wings that no one has access to? Well, so when we sit down and we learn the song, the words are jammed together. It's very difficult if you think about them doing
Soily. Yeah.
That's exactly it. Fat and silly boy. And we just had to make up the words. We would just look at each other when we sung those parts and we would just make up the words because you couldn't decipher them on the recording. But hey,
that's what Lennon did. That's what Lennon did. So, yeah. You know,
but you know, I was lucky to be able to have the stars align, and I go down and I stay 3 weeks with them. They asked me like, hey, do you know a steel guitar player we could get? And I said, yeah, yeah, I do. You can get Pete Drake. And they said, well, Paul doesn't want to use him because he played on Georgia's stuff. So,
Yeah.
so they would ask me certain things. They asked me if I had access to a motorhome. That's when I sensed they were preparing to leave, when they started asking me about the motorhome. They eventually, after my first couple of days, they said, Paul doesn't like reporters. And I said, well, I'm not really interested in doing anything. I just want to hang out with you guys. And I never did a story. In fact,
what did the editor have to say at the end of all of this? Was he like, excuse me?
Well, what happened was last year, you can find it on the internet if you put in Dan Ealey Melody Maker magazine. And I go on a website where Chris Charlesworth, the former U.S. editor, is doing a blog. And I questioned him about some Beatle pictures from the Gaumont Theater that he had posted. And the next thing I know, he's writing a blog about me. And he says that there was a unexpected occurrence came from posting his pictures about the Gaumont, and that Dan Ealey saw the pictures, and this all came back full circle in his blog about me pretending to be a reporter. And he explains it all in the blog and said a line that I've loved so much. He says there's a fine line between deceitfulness and opportunity, or something similar to that, and he said he had forgiven me for that. So afterwards, I got his phone number and I called him up in London, and I had a nice conversation with him. In fact, this past year on his birthday, I called him, wished him happy birthday. So we have been able to keep in touch after all these years. He said he must have changed his number. He said he got a lot of calls from his number being in that section of Melody Maker, and he eventually changed it. But he calls me Melody Maker's man in Nashville. I guess I got the job. I just never did a story. I told everyone else but Melody Maker about it.
Like some people, when you hear that they've got a Beatles connection, you find out it's just their dad cut the Beatles' hair once in 1962. You just knock all that out the water, Dan. But you've ascribed some of it to luck, some of it to possibly a higher power. I'm going to ascribe a lot of it to you. Like you went out there, you were intrepid enough. You had the moxie. And so many people would think about doing what you did and back out at the last minute. So many people would fumble and do it wrong as well. So many people would scare Paul off, or maybe even the band as well.
Well, I had the close encounter with Heather that I recorded, and that is you'll also find that on my page. I eventually take my cassette deck, a portable recorder with a microphone down there, and I'm recording the rehearsals, and I hear this horse riding up with a German Shepherd dog panting, and it's Heather. And you can find this because the actual conversation I recorded and is posted. And she says, my mother sent me to find out who you are, and if you don't belong here, to get rid of you. And I actually thought it was going to be all over. So I said, well, I'm not bothering anything. And she said, yes, you are actually. And why don't you go out to lunch, or go beyond that fence, or why don't you come back later or something? And I said, well, Paul McCartney's practicing, and I want to hear him practice too. And that was the end. And I somehow managed to survive that.
That was risky, man. That was risky.
In fact, in 1995, I show up in London and I go to Abbey Road Studios, and I walk around to Cavendish with a friend of mine, and I approach the entrance, and the gate is open, and I see someone there, and I think it's just another fan in blue jeans and bleached hair that's cropped sort of in a punk style. And I said, "Hey, it looks like you found the place." And they said, "Leave me alone or I'm going to call the police." And they ran in the gate to the house. And I looked up, and I suddenly realized it was Stella.
Oh, wow.
She'd had a brush and a brush and a bucket out at the gate. I just figured someone must have been writing on it or something, but she was in a very foul mood. So I crossed the street, and in a few minutes, the police showed up. Yeah. I have all that on video too, by the way. It's not on YouTube though.
Am I being detained? Am I being detained?
Actually, they were very nice. They said, "Did you get the photographs you wanted?" I thought that I might get to have a conversation about actually meeting her in '74, but she was in such a foul mood that we never had the opportunity. And the next day I was back there, and there was a whole busload of people out. I think my timing must have been bad. I thought it was just a fan outside the gate, but it was Stella with a brush and a bucket. The gate was open, and she was out cleaning on it, scrubbing on it.
Man.
And so I don't know, but that was my encounter in '95. I also went up to Paul's farm in Scotland. Cool. And I went inside the office at Soho. I got inside the door.
Did you get to see the statue from Wings Greatest? Did you get to see that?
I didn't get upstairs. I knew Alan Crowder, so when I saw the courier buzz in, I went in behind him, and I asked if Alan was available, and they told me he was on the phone. I probably should have tried to wait, but I asked for stationery so I could write him a note because I knew him very well from Nashville. He was a terrific guy. And I wrote him a note, and I tore off a few extra pieces of stationery just in case I needed it, and gave it back to him. But, they had a lot of fun at the farm. They were bored at times. Jeff blew up the mailbox. That story is out there. He's finally allowed me to tell it. I took fireworks down and left them. And when I came back, Alan was out at the gate sweating profusely. And I eased up and asked him what he was doing. He said Paul was very upset that they had blown up the mailbox. And I knew that I had supplied the fireworks for that. And so I had no interest in having any further discussion. So I just rolled my window up, and I went on up to the gatehouse, hoping that the subject would not come up anymore. But later on, Denny called me one time, and I said, "Hey, Denny, do you remember you guys blowing up the mailbox?" He said, "Jeffrey did that." and so I asked Jeffrey, and Jeffrey did acknowledge that he did have a little fun. Said it was quite an explosion. But a few years after that, a few years ago, Curly Putnam invited me back to the farm to have lunch with him. I went down at the pool, and he had lunch catered to us. He and I spent the afternoon, 2 or 3 hours, talking about all this. I said, "What about the German Shepherd?" He said, "Oh, that was old Rusty." It was great to be able to have the personal conversation. I said, "Was it funny, odd, having someone living in your house?" He said, "Well, Dan, we all, we had contracts on it and everything." He said, "I'll be honest with you, I needed to pay the mortgage." And he said, "They tore up a few things, but they paid for everything. They took care of everything." So I eventually went from the pool with him into his den, which used to be the garage that they rehearsed. and he played me some of his music, showed me some of his photographs, and I had a song title for him that I had in my pocket. And I said, Curly, I said, you know, you're a great writer of country music, but I can't write country music, but I've got a title for you. He said, what is it? I said, it's Her Favorite Useless Possession. And he sort of grinned. He said, let me have it. If I write it, I'll call you. But of course, I mean, he didn't write it, but it was great to be able to be there and have him welcome me in. It's been full circle for me, and I've been back to the farm since it's sold with the current owners. I've been back and met them, and so you know, it's just it's a very special place when I go there.
Without giving like names away or anything, like who's it owned by now? Just people who live there, or is it?
Yeah, it's just a private. It's just a private owners, you know.
Yeah. Is it like an actual farm though? Still, is it a functioning?
No, it's not it never was really very much of a functioning farm. A little bit of it was 133 acres. Been sort of the gatehouse up front now has been sold off, and a portion of the property where the pond was, another house has been built over there. But the main entrance up to the mansion is still one piece of property, and it's still owned by the you know, it's owned by one party.
And if you took a camera up there and a film crew and some actors, would it pretty much look exactly the same still? Or have they remodeling or?
The house has been remodeled totally.
Okay.
And the guest house has been remodeled totally. But it looks, you would recognize it as the same. I mean, what I want to do is all the fans to chip in $1 each and buy it, and we would turn it into a bed and breakfast. And we would have it a pilgrimage to both Paul and Curly Putnam, because, you know, he wrote The Green, Green Grass of Home.
Of course.
He wrote Divorce. He Stopped Loving Her Today. When we had our 45th anniversary event in 2019, his son, Troy, and his family came to our event. Wow. And so, hey, I'm just honored to have been able to keep the memory of Junior's Farm alive all these years. A lot of people do not realize that Junior's Farm was a real place.
Yeah.
It's not just a song. It was a real place that Paul said he came there for the 3 R's. He said writing, reading, and recording.
Not relaxing.
No relaxing. Well, they relaxed a lot. They rode their motorbikes up and down. They rode horses very often.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have seen what they would have done from sunrise up till 2:30, 3 p.m. then?
No, I didn't know. I showed up after work. I mean, there could have been a Saturday or a Sunday. Well, there was a Sunday that they would usually rehearse in the early afternoon. And when I got there, even during at 2 o'clock, a lot of times they would still just be sitting around the house, the guest house, and the band would be twiddling their thumbs, sort of bored. I think that's part of the reason I got to stay, because I think I provided some entertainment.
Feel free to declare a connection issue. What was there anything other than liquor being consumed on?
I did not see anything. I never saw anything improper in any way, shape, or form. And Jimmy was super nice to me. He was actually an advocate for me. He asked them one time at the breakfast table, Alan, when are you gonna take Dan up to meet Paul?
Oh.
And the phone rung behind them. There was a wall phone, and Alan answered it. Alan Crowder answered it and goes, "Oh no, Paul's up at the main house. That number is 615-242." And I was trying to remember. I did my best to try to remember that number, and I couldn't. I could not. Funny. My mind was buzzing so much. I could, but I do have, in addition to the recordings, I have a couple of phone calls that I recorded. I have me and Jimmy on the phone talking, and I have me and Alan Crowder on the phone talking. When I was a kid, Sam, you got to understand, in about 65 or 66, almost every kid in America got a little tape recorder about this big with little spools of tape. And I would get bored at night and I would call up Apple, person to person. If you called person to person, if Paul McCartney didn't come to the phone, you didn't have to pay for the call. So I have this recordings of the British Telecom ringing tone. And he goes, "Hello, Apple. It's just overseas call from the United States for Mr. Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney's not been seen here in 3 years." So I have those kind of calls still today. I've saved them. I mean, I was doing this stuff many years ago. My infatuation with the Beatles was, I owned at one time John Lennon's personal Apple Watch. And I owned Brian Epstein's tea set. And a lot of this I've sold. Now I had 2 Hoffners signed by Paul McCartney, one on the body, one on the pick guard. I have a letter now from signed by Brian Epstein where he's given a French toast recipe to a journalist. And I have a letter that one of my friends wrote to NIMS in August of 66, asking them if his band could play in Memphis with the Beatles, which is a ridiculous letter, but they wrote back and they responded because I guess that was the thing to do, the proper business etiquette. And they wrote back, and I have the letter in the envelope where they said, "Unfortunately, the acts have been chosen. Therefore, it will not be possible for your band to play with the Beatles in Memphis." And it's dated August.
Oh,
hang on just a moment. I'm back.
Yeah, perfect. You know what? One thing I do want to ask, something that I've kind of brought up on the show several times is how seemingly over nostalgicized or overly romanticized the pre-internet era of Beatles collecting and Beatles fandom was. But I guess you wouldn't agree with that at all. I mean, what was it? Was it more fun back then when you couldn't just go on Facebook and YouTube and find Paul? You had to do a bit of digging. Is that kind of stuff that led you into becoming a private eye?
I don't know why. I mean, as a kid, I watched all the spy shows. All the James Bond. I went to the Bahamas and I went to Sean Connery's house in Lifer Key, and I spied the American TV shows. They were all on my radar. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. with David McCallum. I mean, all I know is I watched all those shows. Now, my friends always told me I was very resourceful, and I think maybe that had something to do with it. I was a criminal justice major in college, but it ended up being my career. And I did a lot of security I did security for Cheap Trick and different acts. I mean, anytime I could, Neil Diamond kicked me out of his dressing room. I've forgiven you for it, Neil. It's okay. But he didn't know what I was doing there. And I didn't expect to run into him when I was 12. But also, I ran into Jimmy Page here in my hometown in 1966. On the Dick Clark Caravan of Stars, the Yardbirds were playing on the show with several other acts. I knew who the Yardbirds were because my cousin, who was an older guitar player, brought me the album Over, Under, Sideways, Down, and he explained to me when I was 12 who the Yardbirds were. So when I found out they were going to be at a show 4 blocks from my house at the university, I didn't have the money to get in, but I went up and I unlocked a window. And I went in and I watched the Yardbirds, and I ran out before the show was over, and I went to the bus. which is the door to the bus was parallel to the door to the building, and I stood in between. And when the door opened, it was Jimmy Page with his guitar case. And I recognized him instantly. And I said, "Hey, you're with the Yardbirds." He said, "That's right." I said, "When are you coming back to Cookeville?" That's my hometown. He said, "Never, I hope." And he boarded the bus.
Oh.
So that was my brief encounter. With James Taylor, I went to meet him at the Holiday Inn because I've always loved James Taylor. And when I went around the outside rooms, the door was open and Peter Asher was standing there. And Peter Asher came out and they asked me for a case of beer. "Can you get us a case of beer?" I said, "No, it's a dry county. You can't get beer on Sunday." And James Taylor looks at me, he says, "We got to get a case of beer." I said, "I don't know. You can't. It's illegal." He said, "Surely you know somebody." So I called up a friend of mine that owned a restaurant, and I had him throw a case of beer out the back door. And I went to pick it up, and I came back. They were still waiting by the rail outside the room. And I said, "I got it for you." And I have a picture of me standing with them. And I give him the case of beer, and James Taylor looks at me and says, "You're going to the sound check with us, aren't you?" And I looked at Peter Asher because I knew he was the boss. And I looked at Peter Asher and I said, "I am." And James Taylor spoke up again. He said, "You are if you want to." So I ride to the sound check with Peter Asher and James Taylor and stood, 3 feet from James Taylor on the floor while he did his sound check. Hey, I had some great times. I met a lot of
Resourceful
people.
is the word for it. You really are.
Well,
And so much of it is yes as well. Just say yes. Just say yes and make up the plan after.
I don't know. There's something they say, these guys, the guys in Wings, and they just say that there's something about me they like, which I'm grateful for, because I did it with the Doobie Brothers. I got one of the guys in the Doobie Brothers to wear my band's shirt on stage while we wore theirs. And they introduced us in the audience in 1979. I have a picture of Tyrone Porter, the bass player for the Doobie Brothers, on stage with my band's t-shirt on. I mean, look, there's a lot of great people out there, musicians. Paul was very nice to me. He was very cordial to me. All those guys was very nice to me. And I've had a great relationship with them. And they have put up with me, I guess, following them for being a fan. But from the collecting standpoint that you talked about earlier, I mean, I own 20,000 records. And
I guess we'll have to have you back on at some point then, probably.
I worked for radio stations. I had more, you know who Dick Clark is in America, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I go to meet Dick Clark because he was on my list as one of my heroes. And I always said I had more jobs than Dick Clark because he was like everything. He was on everywhere. And I did that. I went to my radio station. I said, "What's the worst shift you have that nobody wants to work?" And they told me, 4 a.m. till 12 noon on Saturday and Sunday. And I said, "I'll work it if you give me a job." And I got the job because I took the worst shift they had. The thing about it, I found when I worked for that station, I found one of the rarest records in the world.
Which was?
Pink label Decca, My Bonnie, with Tony Sheridan and the Beat Brothers.
And then that fell out the back door like a case of beer, I'm guessing, yeah?
Well, they gave me, they would allow me, radio stations had thousands of records thrown in boxes. And I worked the weekends when it was church. A lot of church and gospel music was pre-programmed on, so I had downtime. So I just sat around and go through the records and found something I liked, they'd give it to me. And so I recognized that record instantly as soon as I saw it. I have a vast record collection. I'm an Elvis fan. I've got a lot of Elvis collectibles, and but I have my Beatles. I still have my same Beatle records I had when I was 9. I still have those bootleg records that I took down to the farm of the Renaissance minstrels showing the Beatles in the bootleg. I still have those. I never sold them. I don't sell any of my Beatles stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I just enjoy collecting, and I swap and trade. But I don't get rid of my Beatles stuff. And I've got a couple of albums that Denny signed for me. I've got a couple of cards that Denny signed for me. And I had a Brian Epstein contract signed for Jerry and the Pacemakers. I've got Jerry Marsden's signed 45. I mean, those are all the guys that I just loved during the 60s.
You know what? Let's end on one question that I don't know the answer to at all. What is an item, be it Paul McCartney, be it Beatles, that you don't have? What has eluded you? What has escaped your grasp? Or what is something that you want that exists out there?
There's one thing that I want above everything else that only Paul McCartney could provide.
It's verification for the bass guitar, isn't it?
No.
Oh, no. Oh, no. What's it going to be?
Just sign it, Paul. Look, let me tell you this, because people will ask, look, you were there, you had it. Why didn't you just have Paul sign it? Sam, I was standing in the field, and Paul was there on the property. And I looked at this bass around my neck, and I was thinking about, I'm going to ask him to sign it. And my mind said, I don't want him messing up my bass. And I flipped it over like this. And I said, I could just have him sign it on the back. But let me tell you something. If I had had Paul sign this bass in 1974, I wouldn't be standing here holding it today. And here is why. Because it got out of my hands.
Mm-hmm.
If it had been signed by Paul McCartney, whoever had it would have known. And I would have never gotten it back. Now, I have a bass here that's signed by Denny and Jeff, 2 members. It's a Union Jack Fender bass signed by them. But the ultimate thing would be to have Paul to stand with me and sign this from 74 from Junior's Farm. That would be the ultimate thing. If any of you are out there, Paul, if you're there.
Paul, if you do another tour and you hit up Tennessee, you are going to be inundated.
Even have to do a tour. Look, Paul, just email me, find me on YouTube. I'll be in New York tomorrow. I can be in Sussex. I can be at the farm in Scotland, Los Angeles, and this will be with me. I'll make it easy on you. You won't have to go to any trouble. I won't bother you 5 minutes with a marker and a snapshot. I'd be eternally grateful.
And on that note, folks, we're going to bring this to a close. I don't think I have spoken for more than cumulatively 7 minutes this entire episode, which, oh my gosh, my ego has shrunk massively. I feel so humble, right? I am humbled. I really am. When you said you were going to come on, Dan, I thought I was going to get a story along the lines of, yeah, I kind of saw Paul through some trees once and some bracken. I kind of made out his shape, but no, it's a Hollywood story. It really is.
I'll tell you this, when I left, the first time I met him and I drove home and I called up my friends.
You're pinching yourself.
Yeah. I didn't say I met Paul. I said, I just met Beethoven. And I said, I added this to it. I said, how many people in your life can you meet that 1,000 years from now
will be relevant,
will be remembered? And hey, I've met a lot of famous people, but I don't think there's very many of those that 1,000 years from now, everyone will recognize his name. And I put that question to a lot of people, but I realized that the first time I met Paul, I said I met Beethoven, and he's today's equivalent of that.
On that note, folks, we are going to go as well, because it's actually my Moonlight Sonata here in the UK right now. But Dan, thank you so much for gracing this little show. I thought we were only gonna get a short amount of your time, but this is for good cause, for very good reason, being the best and the longest episode of Macca in Your Attic we have ever had. I am, my mouth is agape right now, and rather than just me saying wow, that's cool and that's amazing, that's incredible, we're going to bring this to a close, folks. I've been joined by basically the one man below Mike McCartney, who's known Paul McCartney the most. Is like no one knows Paul McCartney better than this man. 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I know Dan knew Paul. I basically know Paul McCartney now. So oh my gosh, thank you so much for coming on. Please put that t-shirt online. It is your duty to get a Junior's Farm available for purchase. You've got a Facebook page. You can make some moolah here, Dan. Come on. Yeah. Actually, one final question. Is there a fire extinguisher present in the building where all this stuff is kept?
I'm a private detective. There's alarms, cameras, gates.
Oh, sorry, phone's good. Yeah, that's good to hear.
Snakes,
that's good to hear.
Copperheads, rattlesnakes, possums. Don't even think about it.
Good. That's very good to hear, because there's like when you see like the headline, there was a headline a couple of years ago here in the UK, famous props from the man with the golden gun stolen, and like it nothing would bring me greater sadness than like, McCartney, Rickenbacker missing. All right, okay, Dan's on the case. He will find them. Look at that.
We never sleep either.
No, I wouldn't. I would never sleep if that Rickenbacker was in my house. Well, I know I would sleep, but with it, I would be in it, in bed, snuggling it, just stroking the strings like that. Oh my gosh.
Well, find Jonathan Pushkar's Junior's Farm, Pushkar, and you can hear the sound of this Rickenbacker along with me and Jeff Britton on it. And it's an honor to be on that recording.
Yeah, you should
check it out.
You should be very proud of that. I really enjoyed it, and I've really enjoyed this episode today. Links to everything Dan has spoken about today will be in the links below. Make sure you go check out all of that. Let's do the wings thing one more time. There we are, folks. Take care. Peace and love. Play us out, Denny. Ta-ra.